My parents believed a girl's wrong accusation and badly hurt my brother. Years later, I ran away from home to live with him, fought for my custody, and won. I'm 14 years old and have been wanting to share this story for a long time. It's a long story, so please be patient. I know it might sound like a lie, but believe me, I wanted it to be more than anything. This has ruined my family, and I'm not allowed to talk because my parents want to forget what they did to stay safe. I'm using my friend's brother's Reddit account. My parents had lost their partners. My father separated from my older sister, Lucy's mother. Currently, Lucy is 25 years old. My mother lost her ex-husband in a car accident and had to take care of my brother, who is now 23. This turned them into single parents with custody of their children. The two met on the beach, and after talking and exchanging numbers, they started dating. 2 years later, they got married. Let's stop rambling and get to the story. It all started when I was 8 years old, and my brothers were 17 and 19. My brother was in his third year of high school, and my sister worked at the grocery store near our house. While my parents and sister worked, I stayed with Kirby. It may seem strange, but the best moments of my life were when Kirby was with me. I know many older brothers don't get along with younger ones, but that wasn't the case. I loved Kirby with all my heart, and I know he loved me too. He always took care of me, played and studied with me, and sometimes took the scolding for me. One day, everyone was leaving school, waiting for Kirby in front of my school because our schools were close. He always came to pick me up, but this time it was different. He didn't show up. I stayed until 4:00 p.m. when my sister came to pick me up. I asked about my brother, but she didn't answer and avoided the conversation. When we got home, I was surprised by the sound of things breaking and my parents' frightening screams. Entering the house, the scene was worse than I could imagine. Kirby was falling to the floor as my father kicked him and threw dishes at him. My mother screamed horrible curses at Kirby. I was so scared that I didn't leave my sister's side. She took me upstairs and told me not to leave the room until further notice. I stayed there listening and crying. I had never seen my family like that and can say that I'm still afraid of them, no matter how old I am. Suddenly, I heard a siren. When I looked out the window, I saw 2 vehicles and many policemen exiting them. They soon entered the house. A little later, I heard more screams and the sound of arrest as I saw my father and mother being forcibly taken by the police to the vehicle. They screamed horrible words at my brother, calling him a miserable worm who deserved to be killed, with my mother always agreeing. After they were put in the car, I went downstairs and saw Lucy crying on the floor with Kirby in her arms. He was covered in blood and bruises. Everything became a blur. I remember being inside an ambulance and then the hospital. It felt like a dream. But my sister disagrees, saying it was a nightmare and the worst day of her life. About 3 days later, my parents were still in jail for assault and attempted murder. My sister took a few days off to look after me, and I finally gathered the courage to ask her what had happened. Lucy, being the first person to ever treat me like an adult, told me the truth. Our brother Kirby had been accused of rape by a girl in high school. The girl went to the screaming and bruised principal, claiming that Kirby had abused her. Our parents and the girl's parents were called to school, and even the police got involved. Although Kirby explained to our parents that he didn't do it, they wouldn't listen and took the girl's side. The police said they would investigate and run some tests, so Kirby and the girl went home. However, what happened next was devastating. Our brother was hospitalized due to the severe beating he received, which caused major physical problems. The next day, the police called my sister to the station, and she had to take me with her. What they revealed was terrifying. Apparently, it was Karen, the girl who made the report. Karen, if you're reading this, know that you are the most despicable person I know. I hope you burn in hell, you bastard. You destroyed our lives. She had made a false report because she and Kirby hated each other at school. After another fight, she hurt herself and planned to say he hit her. Then she escalated to a rape claim, thinking she could expel my brother from school. But she made a mistake. She told her friends during a video call and laughed about the situation. What she didn't anticipate was that everyone would turn against her, except her best friend, who had really suffered sexual abuse when she was little and wasn't believed until recently. Karen's former best friend went to the police and confessed everything, even recording part of the conversation. After the truth came out, the police questioned Karen, and fearing arrest, she confessed. My sister was furious and wanted to kill Karen, but the police calmed her down. saying Karen's parents would have to pay a fine for the false accusation and slander. My sister thought it was good, but not enough. When we got back home, my sister exploded, recounting everything that happened at the police station while screaming. My parents listened in silence, becoming more surprised with each sentence. By the time my sister was done, my mom was in tears and I was still paralyzed with shock. Then my father did the worst thing. He asked, "Are you sure about this, man?" That was the worst choice of words I had ever heard. Lucy gave a long speech about how they were bad parents for believing the girl without any proof. My dad tried to justify that the girl's word was worth a lot, but my sister refuted him, saying that without evidence, her words were worthless. Unfortunately, many rape victims are called liars when not proven, but this case was different. Karen lied and deceived everyone for a petty reason. I hope you understand. My father was defeated after that, and for several days, the house was silent. It wasn't the same without Kirby. He was the soul of the house, good and kind to almost everyone, always bringing joy to all of us. To this day, I don't know how my parents fell so easily for his lies. I hate them for that and will never forgive them for what they did. After a long time, Kirby woke up but only to see his poor condition. For you to have an idea, his jaw was broken, he lost 60 of vision in one eye. His arm and forearm were broken, his ribs badly damaged, and he narrowly missed puncturing his lung. His leg was so badly damaged that he would never walk properly again without help. He also developed post-traumatic stress, depression, and anxiety. My brother was never the same. He still feels severe pain and needs to take a lot of controlled medication. He didn't speak to us much, and when he removed the device that held his jaw in place, it didn't change much. He only spoke when asked questions, didn't speak when he was hungry, and often started crying out of nowhere, likely due to the trauma. I wanted to hug him, but his wounds were so severe that it was risky. Many times my parents tried to visit my brother. My mother begged, and my father wanted to force us to let them in, but my sister forbade it because she knew the last thing my brother wanted was to see them. She told them that, but it wasn't enough. One day, my mother couldn't visit him because of work, and my parents saw it as a good opportunity to visit my brother in secret. They probably thought, let's visit our son, apologize, he accepts, and we'll be fine, and one big happy family again. What a serious mistake. As soon as they entered the room, my brother gave the loudest scream I had ever heard from him. Soon, doctors and nurses entered to calm my brother. He said, "Get them out of here. They are murderers. They've come to kill me. Please get them." Soon after, he started crying and passed out due to the stress. The police then expelled my parents, forbidding them to see Kirby. Only my sister and I were allowed to see him. My mother cried all night while my father kept blaming our brother, saying he was exaggerating. After many months of recovery, both physically and mentally, Kirby was released from the hospital. My parents had the audacity to ask him to come home, but they received this response: "I will not come back to this house, even if it were the last place on earth. From now on, I am also motherless. I hope you both pay for everything you did to me." My brother moved in with his paternal grandparents, who didn't know anything until that moment, and took protective measures against our parents. He said that my sister and I were welcome to visit him whenever we wanted, and we did. I spent more time with him than at home with our parents. The last straw came when we found out at a family party that my father had lied to our whole family, saying that our brother had dropped out of school to live a life of drugs and had left home taking his things and the money we were saving for my college. That money wasn't even earned by them. It was Kirby and Lucy, who were raising money for my college. Kirby worked many odd jobs and was now saving money because, according to him, I deserved a better future. My sister and I were furious. We told the whole truth to our family, who were incredulous and very angry with our parents. The only ones who stood by were my paternal grandparents, who said that it was humane and that my parents did nothing wrong, just ashamed of what. But no one would listen, and they abandoned our parents, siding with Kirby to apologize. Fun fact, Kirby called me the next day, asking why people he hadn't spoken to in months came to apologize to him. He didn't know why. A year after the incident, Karen's parents showed up at our door asking if Kirby was home. When we said no, they apologized for what happened and left. Later, I found out that they wanted to pay Kirby severance pay, giving him all the money that was for college and Karen's car. My brother said, "Thanks, but I don't forgive Karen." And he'll never forgive her. If she ever shows up in front of him, he'll confront her face to face. Her parents accepted this and left. Currently, my big brother is much better. but he is not cured. He has many nightmares of that day, leading to anxiety attacks. It is necessary for someone to go to him to calm him down. I want to be there so much to help my brother and to get rid of the toxic environment we call home. So I thought I would move in with Kirby first. I spoke to my brother, who was hesitant at first, but accepted and spoke to his grandparents, who agreed. I spoke to Lucy, and she thought it was a great idea. But when I spoke to my parents, it was a completely different story. My mother burst into tears and my father was desperate, saying that everyone had already abandoned them and now his youngest son too. I got irritated and told him that I had already abandoned him that afternoon and that he would never have me back. My father, a man in his 50s, always said that crying was for sissies. He started crying like a baby, saying he had already lost everything and didn't want to lose me too. I couldn't stand that situation and left the house. Going to a friend's house to vent, my friend suddenly scolded me, saying I shouldn't abandon my parents like that since his older brother, who owns this Reddit account, said he didn't know anything and told him to shut up. Steve said his brother was someone with a weak mind and that I should seek more people's opinions. He introduced me to Reddit and asked me to ask this question. What do I do, guys? Update when you're at... Well, guys, a lot has happened since my last post. I had a question, but thanks to you all for helping me make up my mind. Thanks to everyone for the supportive comments and to the owner of this account who supports me. I ended up having to run away from home because my parents forbade me to leave the house. I waited for them to leave together because they were going shopping and never took me along, thinking I was just a kid who would only ask for junk. I didn't expect it. My parents made me go with them, which was a big mistake. I thought I would just take the basics, put them in a backpack, and take some snacks to cover it up. As soon as we got to the market, I asked to go to the bathroom. Luckily, they were so obsessed with how the price of food had gone up that my dad just told me to go and come back soon. Plot twist, I didn't come back. I ran away from the market as quickly as possible and took the bus closest to Kirby's grandparents' house. When I arrived, it was Kirby's grandmother, who received me and told me to be at ease, while Kirby and her grandfather didn't come home immediately. When they arrived, I told everything that had been posted on Reddit, and my brother's reaction was not what I expected. He said I was very irresponsible for running away, and that it was dangerous because something could have happened to me. He may even seem distant, but I like that when he scolds me. It shows he cares about me. Unlike our parents, I could disappear for 3 days, and they wouldn't miss me. That already happened, and they just got mad when they found out. I accepted the scolding in a good way and asked if I could stay. He said, "You will come back here even if I have to send you back to their house, so you better stay." I was very happy and hugged him. His grandparents were also very happy with my brother's decision. But my joy disappeared when he said I would have to notify my parents. I protested, knowing they would come for me, but my brother said they are responsible for me. If I didn't tell them, they could call the police and say that I was kidnapped and that he was holding me hostage. I called my mom. She barely answered and started screaming at me, asking where I was. When I said where I was, she got even more pissed and started screaming in an alien language that everyone around could hear. I could have stood there listening, but I hung up when I realized Kirby was uncomfortable with the yelling. After the aggression, he became sensitive to screaming. He cursed my parents for what they did to him. I got angry and said they could come and take me by force, but my brother said they are aggressive, but not idiots. He has a protective measure. If they approach, we would call the police. How wrong he was. An hour and a half later, they were banging on the front door, cursing and screaming. Kirby's grandparents told them to leave, or they would call the police. This made them even more pissed off, and they went back to banging on the door. I wanted to go tell them to leave, but Kirby needed me. I needed to hold him because he wanted to go. It shows in their faces how much anger he has towards them. He even said once that he wanted to kill them both slowly and painfully. I agree with that sentiment, but I don't think he should get his hands dirty with them. They broke into the house and started destroying it in search of me. At that moment, I decided to go downstairs to send them away. I was asking my brother to calm down so I could leave him safe. Then my mother gave a scream, the loudest I had ever heard from her, and my father shut up after convincing my brother to stay in the room. I went downstairs, and the scene was depressing. My dad was slumped and shaking on the floor while my mom was over him, crying and calling to him in vain. I looked at Kirby's grandparents and saw that the grandfather was holding a taser. We all know what happened next. When my mother saw me, she started screaming, "You see what they did to your father. Call the police. They must be arrested." I replied. If I called the police, the ones who would be arrested would be her for breaking the rules of the protective measure, which she ignored and continued screaming for us to call an ambulance for her husband. We ignored her and said that as soon as my father recovered, they should leave and never come back. When my father was returning to his normal self, he was strangely silent, totally beaten and defeated. Suddenly, my brother came down and my mother immediately attacked him, creating this intense confrontation. Mad mother versus angry brother. She started blaming him for everything, saying he was the reason all our relatives had abandoned her and that her children were turning their backs on her. She began to victimize herself, saying she was just an innocent woman who went to church every Sunday and that I was a good person who didn't deserve to go through that. I don't know what she meant by that. No one would feel sorry for her just because of that. Kirby was silent throughout her tirade, but then she crossed the line. She said he was supposed to apologize for destroying their lives and telling everyone in the family that I had forgiven them. That was the limit. Kirby, very angry, gave her a slap so hard in the face that she fell to the ground. My mother started screaming again, but Kirby told her to shut up or he would break her teeth on the base of her cane. He screamed about all the things he had held back over the years, how miserable people they were, how they dug their own graves, and how they didn't deserve anyone around them. He even threatened to piss on their coffins when they die. My mom started to get even angrier and tried to hit Kirby, but I pushed her against the wall. She started yelling at me too, saying I would go to hell for abandoning her, and called me a disgusting gay who would go to hell. Curiously, I'm bisexual and made the mistake of telling my parents. Surprisingly, my father was okay with it, but my mother was really pissed, saying she would go to hell and forbade me from being bisexual. She even introduced me to her daughters, her friends at church, saying it was disgusting and made the girls uncomfortable. The funny thing was that when I told Kirby, he just said, "So you give me a nephew, let's be cool." My brother started sending them away and told them they should pay for the damage they did to the house, or we would file a complaint. My mother laughed, saying I wouldn't have the courage to report her. I said that I have the most courage, and that I would have the satisfaction of seeing her arrested again. She made a bunch of excuses, saying we didn't have proof, but my brother refuted her, saying we had the very proof they were there. Besides fingerprints and cameras, he had video evidence of what happened. It took a little longer, but she eventually accepted her defeat and left. But my brother wanted to leave the icing on the cake. When my mother was getting in the car, Kirby shouted, "Hey, I wish you could die in my father's place." In response, she gave the middle finger and got in the car screaming, which made my brother laugh. The victory laugh after a long game of his favorite game. Soon after, our sister called us saying that our mother had called her, claiming that she was attacked by our brother and that she was supposed to bring me back home to fix things. Our sister said she was very proud of me for standing up to them and that Kirby was supposed to have broken the cane over their heads. Now, I'm living with my brother as I always wanted, and it's been wonderful. He wants my custody at all costs and is threatening our parents to give it to him. My mother said she would not leave me with an abuser, thinking that my being bisexual is because I was abused by my brother. How ridiculous. I think it's just a case of waiting for her to give in. Everything is on track for now, because I had a conversation with my brother before he went to sleep. He was wondering what it would be like if our father was alive. I replied that maybe his life would be a little better, but he said, maybe not. If our father hadn't died, maybe I wouldn't have suffered the aggression, but then I wouldn't have my two angels in my life. He gave me a kiss on the forehead, which was so sweet. I hugged him. I love him so much, and I know we will protect each other at all costs. Thank you very much to everyone who supported me. I hope that no one has to suffer what we suffered. For those who think our story is false, believe me, I wanted us to be a good family that welcomes and protects each other regardless of the situation. But no, this can only happen in my dreams. See you guys. Maybe I'll update with the results of the process. See you then. Update 2. Hey guys, thank you so much for your support. Believe me, I'm fine, and my brother is better, but fine isn't enough for him. He wants my custody at all costs and is going after our parents with everything he has. I wouldn't be here if it was just to say we're fine. Let's get to the story. We were having a quiet afternoon until there was a knock on the door, which had already been repaired by a friend of Kirby's grandfather. I went to answer it, but was very surprised to see my father there. I sent him away at once, but he said he just wanted to talk and didn't want to cause a fuss. I told him off and said we'd only talk in court. However, my dad insisted, and Kirby's grandparents threatened to call the police. To our surprise, Kirby said, "Leave him, come in." We questioned him, but he just called my dad a pushy idiot and said he wouldn't leave easily, so it was better to let him in to get it over with. We prepared in case he got aggressive. Kirby sat at the kitchen table. We all stayed in the kitchen for safety, and Kirby's grandmother was recording to have more proof that my father broke the protective measure. The conversation went as follows. "Mom, it's very brave of you to come back here after all you've done, Father. I'm sorry, I swear I'll pay for all the damage. Of course you can solve everything with money, right? But I'm not talking about material goods that are replaceable. What you did to me is priceless." Kirby, "Father, I know. I'm sorry. I swear I would give my life to go back in time. I would do everything differently." "Yeah, but unfortunately, you can't go back in time, and the damage has already been done. You destroyed me. You destroyed our family, Father." Carps, "But it was an accident. If you had told us from the beginning, maybe it would have been different." "See, Kirby, you who didn't want to listen to me. Now do you know what you did to me? They made me feel that I was not worthy to live. You made me want to die. Do you have any idea what it's like to feel that?" "No, because you are the assailant and the aggressor. You'll never feel the fear that the victim felt. You son of a move." At that moment, Kirby started to cry, but it was a cry of anger and resentment that he had held back for all these years. My father continued to ask in vain, but Kirby said that his desire to apologize wasn't because he regretted what he did, but rather to feel good about himself. However, my dad kept apologizing so much that my brother threw his ultimatum right there, even though he was close to having another anxiety attack. "Do you want forgiveness? Here's what we're going to do. You're going to give me custody of my brother. You're going to pay his child support, and you're never going to try to get close to me or any of us again. Otherwise, I guarantee you, I will make your days a real hell." My father agreed instantly. I don't feel sorry for him, but I've never seen him as defeated as he was at that moment. I think the shock of his actions finally hit him hard, but I don't feel sorry for him. He deserves this. He deserves to feel the misery he caused our family. Soon after, he left, saying he was going to try to convince my mother to give up my custody. He also asked me for forgiveness, but I just ignored him. At the exact moment he walked out the door, my brother broke down. I think his courage had dropped. He started crying and was on his knees, hyperventilating and sweating. We took him through the room so he could lie down and gave him his medicine for anxiety, but nothing seemed to help. I called my sister and told her everything that had happened. She came immediately, and we all stayed in the room trying to calm him down. My sister kept saying that my brother was one of the bravest people we knew. However fearful he was strong enough to stay in the same room as my father, his abuser, and after many hours, my brother finally calmed down and managed to sleep. Just in case, Lucy and I slept with him because he could have many nightmares afterward. But of course, nothing could end like that. My mom called us hours later, asking what that demon cell Kirby had done to her husband. She accused my brother of attacking her sweet hubby and said he wanted to give everything to him. My sister just told her off and said that at least one of us had come to our senses. Again, I hope everything works out and my mom finally comes to her senses and does the right thing. Thanks so much for everyone's support, and thanks to you, Steve, who owns this account and has always been there for me since I shared my story. While I'm gone, I'll send you updates. See you later. I don't want my brothers to have their privacy invaded by fake names. Update 3. Hey guys, it's been a while. You deserve at least the latest update. And I can say I'm so happy because it's finally over. It's really over. I'm free from that place and those people. Final update. My mother didn't want custody in any way. My father threatened us in every possible way, but she didn't care. She said she would never give up on me and would do anything to get me back. Since she wasn't giving in, we resorted to psychological pressure. We informed everyone in our family about what happened and how my brother wanted custody of me. Our family understood and attacked my mother directly, saying it was the least she and my father could do for the past. However, my mother blocked all of our parents, claiming my brother had spelled them all, citing witchcraft as the reason. My mother proved to be a completely out of control person. A week after I moved in, she called me in that overbearing Karen tone, saying, "I'll give you two options. You're going to come home without complaining and we're going to forget about it. Or you're going to come back and the plague is going to happen. Suffer the consequences, I didn't lower my head and replied that my brother had a name she had given herself and that he wouldn't go back to that house, even dead. She hung up on me. I was afraid she might do something wrong to Kirby, so I called him to let him know. He said not to worry and that someone would let me know. So it happened. The police knocked on our neighbor's door, an elderly lady who was very kind. The police had been called due to a report of abuse of minors in the house because they didn't think we were still there. I quickly put the pieces together. My mother called the police but was so far gone mentally that she gave our address wrong, leading the police to the wrong house, as we knew she would. Hours later, she called me, saying she could withdraw the complaint. So I went home without complaining. Of course, I told her to go to hell and hung up. My brother apologized to the neighbor for what happened and decided that since she wanted to play dirty, we would play dirty too. We used our last weapon, our maternal grandmother, the only person we knew my mother hated more than my brother. It was difficult to find her contact because, unfortunately, our grandmother simply hated me and my sister for being our father's children. She was the typical grandmother with her favorite grandson, Kirby, which gave us an advantage. After hunting down her number or address, we finally found her. My brother called her and told her everything, from the assault to our current problems, asking if she could help. Her only response was that she would be here as soon as possible. An hour and a half later, she arrived in our city, which was good because my brother only asked her to confront my mother. She agreed to the deal and went straight to my parents' house for a surprise visit, which my mom hates. She called me and Lucy, asking if my brother had anything to do with it, which we ignored. It was even fun. Our grandmother was driving our parents crazy on purpose, and they couldn't fight back because my mother is greedy, and our grandmother has a good amount of land that, if sold, could support someone for a long time. That's right. In addition to being idiots and psychopaths, my parents are also greedy. I think my brother must have fallen into the wrong family because it's just impossible. After 2 weeks of torture for our parents, my mother finally asked when she would leave. My grandmother replied that she would only leave when my mother gave up custody of me, which my mother did not agree to and started wanting our grandmother to leave. She played the final cards. My mother would give up custody of me or be completely out of her will or money. Guess which one she chose? One. So we went to court, and believe me, if looks could kill, my parents would already be buried. The judge reviewed the entire history of what happened and got irritated, wondering how my parents escaped justice so easily. In my opinion, in our world, money is worth more than someone's crimes. My father even hid his face, but my mother was there, confident that she hadn't done anything wrong. The most tense moment was when Kirby and my mother faced each other. Believe me, if you were there and saw the looks they gave each other, it was scary. I sometimes forget that these two used to live together. My mother could pretend to be normal and be your friend, but she is fake and manipulative. If you do or say something she disagrees with, she sees it as a threat, and my brother, on the other hand, has such an open mind that it almost scares me. He can make friends with almost any type of person. If you ever see a young man using a cane, smiling and waving, you can be pretty sure it could be my brother. I still struggle to understand how two such contradictory beings could share the same family. Returning to the custody process, it was complicated but moved quickly. After all, my parents didn't dare to fight for me, so our lawyer arranged an agreement that allowed me to live with my brother. My parents would have to pay generous alimony. My mother questioned why they had to pay child support if I was now my brother's responsibility, but both my father and our grandmother told her to shut up and accept the agreement. After a lot of anxiety and waiting, we finally secured it. Now I can live with my brother, and my parents would have no rights over me. Exactly 30 minutes after the results were announced, I deleted my parents' contact information. I no longer needed it. They were part of a past I wanted to forget. But there's more. Our grandmother revealed something shocking before she left. My mother had never been in her will. She had taken her out right after marrying my father. It was almost funny. She literally traded her place for something she would never have. The only person in the will was my brother. From my perspective, this was wonderful. Kirby got everything he wanted and deserved. I'm not sure if I'd call it divine justice, but it felt right, and we couldn't be happier. I want to thank everyone on Reddit and the owner of this account for their support. You helped me through this terrible chapter of my life, and now it's ended with a happy conclusion. Personally, I hope I don't have to return here, unless I have something truly important to share.